Elena had learned long ago how to stay quiet. Silence was her only shield in a house filled with rage. Every creak of the floorboards, every slam of the door sent a chill down her spine. Her father's voice, loud, slurred, and full of anger, echoed through the walls almost every night. Bottles shattered, furniture scraped, and sometimes she heard her own name shouted in a tone that made her heart stop. That night felt different. The tension was heavier, suffocating. She could hear unfamiliar voices in the living room, men speaking in low, dangerous tones. Elena pressed herself against the corner of her small room, her hands trembling as she tried to make sense of the words drifting through the door. "Time's up," one man said coldly. "You owe too much." Her father's voice cracked, desperate now. I can pay. Just give me more time." A sharp laugh followed. "You've run out of time." There was a long pause. Then, something shifted. Her father's tone changed, quieter, calculating. "I have something valuable." Elena's breath caught. Moments later, her door burst open. Her father stood there, eyes cold, not like a father's at all. Before she could speak, he grabbed her arm roughly and pulled her into the hallway. "What are you doing?" she whispered, panic rising. He didn't answer. The men looked at her, assessing, as if she were nothing more than an object. And then her father said the words that shattered her world completely. "Take her." The ride to the mansion felt endless. Elena sat in the back seat of a black car, her hands clenched tightly in her lap, her heart pounding so loudly it drowned out everything else. She didn't dare look at the men beside her. Every worst possibility filled her mind. She had heard stories about men like Victor, ruthless, heartless, dangerous. Men who didn't show mercy. When the car finally stopped, the gates opened slowly, revealing a massive estate lit by soft, golden lights. It looked beautiful. But to Elena, it felt like a prison. She was led inside, her steps unsteady. The mansion was quiet, almost eerily so. No shouting, no chaos, just silence that made her more uneasy. Guards stood at every corner, watching her carefully. Then she saw him. Victor stood near the grand staircase, tall and composed, his expression unreadable. The room seemed to hold its breath around him. Elena lowered her gaze immediately, her body tensing as she waited for something terrible to happen. "This is her," one of the men said. There was a pause. Elena braced herself. But instead of anger or cruelty, Victor simply studied her for a moment. His voice, when he finally spoke, was calm, unexpectedly so. "Untie her." The ropes around her wrists were removed. Elena blinked in confusion, rubbing her sore skin. "From now on," Victor said, his tone steady, "no one touches her without my permission." The room fell silent. Elena looked up, startled. This wasn't what she expected. Not at all. For the first time that night, fear mixed with something unfamiliar, uncertainty. The days that followed felt unreal. Elena woke each morning expecting the nightmare to begin, but it never did. No one barged into her room. No one shouted her name in anger. Instead, there was quiet, an unfamiliar, almost unsettling kind of peace. A woman named Marta was assigned to her, bringing meals and clean clothes. She spoke gently, never raising her voice, which confused Elena even more. The guards outside her door didn't leer or threaten her. They simply nodded and kept their distance. Still, Elena didn't trust it. She barely ate, barely slept. Every small kindness felt like a trap waiting to snap. She flinched when someone knocked, her body always bracing for pain that never came. One afternoon, she wandered into the garden, drawn by the sunlight. It was the first time she had stepped outside since arriving. The air felt different, free. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the warmth touch her face. "You should eat more." The voice startled her. She turned quickly to see Victor standing a few steps away. She hadn't heard him approach. "I'm not hungry," she said quietly, lowering her gaze. He studied her, not with anger, but something else, something she couldn't understand. "You won't survive long like that." His words weren't harsh. They were matter-of-fact. Elena frowned slightly. "Why do you care?" For a moment, he said nothing. Then, calmly, "Because you're not a debt. Not here." She looked up at him, surprised. And for the first time, a small crack appeared in the wall she had built around herself. The peace didn't last. It happened in seconds. One moment, Elena was walking through the quiet hallway, the soft echo of her footsteps the only sound. The next, everything erupted into chaos. A loud crash shattered the stillness, followed by shouting and the sharp crack of gunfire. Her heart leapt into her throat. Before she could react, a masked man grabbed her from behind, a hand clamping over her mouth to silence her scream. Panic exploded through her body as she struggled, but his grip was too strong. "Move!" he hissed. She was dragged through a back exit, her feet barely keeping up. The world blurred as fear consumed her. Guards shouted in the distance, more gunshots ringing out, but it all felt far away, like she was being pulled out of reality itself. They shoved her into a van, tying her hands tightly. The door slammed shut, trapping her in darkness. Her breathing became uneven, tears streaming down her face as every terrible memory came rushing back. She had known this safety was temporary. She had known something would go wrong. Hours, or maybe minutes, later, the van suddenly screeched to a halt. Voices shouted outside. Then silence. A single gunshot echoed. The doors burst open. Light flooded in, and there he was. Victor. His expression was no longer calm. His eyes burned with something fierce, something terrifying. He stepped forward, cutting her restraints without a word. "You're safe," he said, his voice low but firm. Elena stared at him, shaken. And in that moment she realized something chilling. He wasn't just protecting her. He was willing to destroy anyone who tried to take her away. After that night, something inside Elena shifted. The fear didn't disappear completely, but it no longer controlled her the same way. Victor's words, "You're safe," kept echoing in her mind, and for the first time in her life, she wanted to believe them. Recovery was slow. The nightmares still came, pulling her back into darkness, but now there was always morning waiting on the other side. Victor made sure of it. He arranged for a tutor to help her continue her studies, something her father had never cared about. At first, Elena resisted, convinced it was pointless. But Victor didn't force her, he simply gave her the choice. "You decide who you become," he told her once. Those words stayed with her. Days turned into weeks, and Elena began to change. She started asking questions, learning about the business side of Victor's empire, the legal fronts, the investments, the strategy. She discovered she had a sharp mind, one that noticed details others missed. And she wasn't afraid to speak anymore. One evening, during a meeting, she pointed out a flaw in a deal Victor's men were discussing. The room went silent. No one expected her to talk, let alone challenge them. Victor looked at her, surprised, but not angry. "Explain." Her voice shook at first, but she didn't back down. When she finished, Victor nodded once. "She's right." Respect replaced the silence. Elena realized then that she wasn't just surviving anymore. She was becoming something stronger, someone who could stand beside power, not beneath it. The past didn't stay buried. One evening, as the mansion settled into its usual quiet rhythm, the gates opened for an unexpected visitor. Elena felt it before she even saw him, that familiar dread crawling up her spine. When she stepped into the hall and her eyes landed on him, her breath caught. Her father. He looked the same, tired, disheveled, but with that same cold greed in his eyes. As if nothing had changed. As if he hadn't traded her life like it meant nothing. "I came for what I'm owed," he said, his voice carrying through the room. Elena's hands trembled, but she didn't step back. "You owe nothing," she replied, her voice quieter than she intended, but steady. He laughed bitterly. "Don't act brave now. You belong to this world because of me. The words stung, but something inside her refused to break this time. No, she said, lifting her chin. I survived in spite of you. The room fell silent. Victor stood nearby, watching, but he didn't interfere. This was her fight. Her father's expression darkened. I can expose everything here. You think he'll protect you forever? Elena took a slow breath, her fear still there, but no longer in control. Do it, she said. Because I'm not afraid of you anymore. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across his face. And in that moment, Elena realized the truth. The man who once controlled her life had no power left. She had taken it back.